What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lone Duck's Gundog Chronicles. Kevin is out of the office. He's got a real job work call, and so we've got a different Kevin here. Kevin Cheff, the retriever coach. Welcome back, and thanks for coming to the in-house show, bud.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
What are you doing in Central New York?
Well, I'm going to be in Sprakers this weekend doing an in-person workshop there.
That's awesome. How many people are coming?
Yeah, I want to say it's around 10. I only take 7 or 8 handlers in a workshop, and then the rest are observers. And so, yeah, I think there's about 10.
That's awesome. Well, I want to give a shout out to the Finger Lakes and Empire State Club members that are Shefties. Everybody's heard of Swifties, Taylor Swifties. They're all Shefties, so they're excited to hear this podcast with you and welcoming you to Central New York. A bunch of them are going to be at your seminar. So
awesome. I didn't know that. Okay.
Tell them I said hi and bust their chops about being a Shefty.
I will.
You better do it. I'm going to ask them.
I will.
Well, today we've got a great episode for you. We're really excited about it. We touched on it with JD Babb. That would be, I believe, last week's episode. And we kind of touched on handling on marks. And I saw something on your Facebook page that you did an awesome dissertation on proper timing, when and how to handle on marks. And so this episode is going to be pretty thorough on when and how to handle on marks, general practice. We're going to talk about retired guns and like the art of teaching a retired gun. And then we're going to talk about handling on a retired gun and how you kind of each little segment, how we're going to move and shake and go from there. So let's do a little good housekeeping in the beginning.
Okay.
So I'm going to go first, then you go.
Okay.
Good housekeeping. We're going to have a couple of litters of puppies soon. So Quinn is being bred probably next week. Lizzie is being bred probably the late next week to the following week. We have a wait list, but if you're interested, you can go on the Lone Duck Outfitters website, fill out a form, and we can reach out to you and kind of educate you on it. Also stay up to date on Instagram and Patreon, where we'll put out there like, hey, we got 2 female spots available, or whatever the case may be. So that's my good housekeeping. And you?
Well, I'm going to introduce myself because I don't know if all your viewers know who I am.
Get out of town.
My name's Kevin Cheff, and other people know me as the retriever coach. As I said, I do in-person workshops. I have an online membership platform called Fetch, which is it's been running now for about 2.5 years, where I coach people all over the world, basically, who want to train their retrievers and experience more joy with them. And in fact, our enrollment for Fetch is open right now. If anybody's interested in becoming a member and getting access to me so that they can ask their questions anytime they want, or they want a program for their dog, whether they're a puppy or running all age training, Fetch is open for them right now.
Absolutely. So we're going to put that in the show notes so that it can funnel you to his Fetch program. And I've got a lot of friends, again, here at the Finger Lakes Retriever Club that have purchased your program and just speak very highly of it. So check it out in the show notes, click on it, look into it. If it fits what you want to do, knock it out, baby. Yeah. All right, let's get into the show. So handling on marks.
Yeah.
What are some of the prerequisites for handling on marks?
Well, first of all, the dog has to have all their foundational training. And, we want to make sure that they've come through all of the yard work. We've done some handling drills beforehand, not just the T work, but I think some other more advanced handling work that helps transition handling skills from the yard to the field. Yeah. That's really important. And I think you've got to have a pretty good process in mind how you're going to transition dogs to handling on marks. Up to this point, every mark they've done, you've essentially just released the dog into the field to go get the birds. And so this is going to be a little foreign to them, even though they've done some handling, in the drill work, as we said, and maybe on some early blinds. It's still going to be a little bit foreign to them to be handled on marks. And so it's not as simple as just, blowing a whistle and putting your arm up and expecting to get the right outcome. There's a little bit more to the process there.
Yeah, it can get a little haywire for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're barely learning, to me, they're barely learning how to run a good blind. And then when they're in full momentum, full drive, and you're trying to stop them and they're going, what are you talking about? This isn't what we do for the last 8 to 12 months. You haven't done this on a mark. it takes a lot of practice and to maintain like the discipline of stopping good. You know, there's so many things to it.
Absolutely. There's so many stimulating factors out there. It's not like when you're running those early cold blinds and there's nothing else out in the field. You're just trying to get your dog to a destination. Usually when we're handling on marks, there's other gun stations in the field that are influencing the dog. There's bird scent out there. You know, they've heard gunshots or duck calls, and these things are drawing the dog's attention. So it can be much more difficult to get control of the dog.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So, all right, so we got the prereqs knocked out. Let's talk about reasons why we would handle on a mark.
Well, I essentially think there are three reasons why we would handle on a mark. The first one is, and these are in no particular order, by the way, but the first reason that I'm going to talk about is we're handling a dog because they're failing to fight a factor. And in case people don't know what factors are the things that push or pull a dog offline to the retrieve. That's wind, water, terrain, and cover. Sometimes it can also be the influence of another gun station.
Yeah.
And then the second reason why we would handle is the dog is failing a marking concept. And it's sort of similar to my last comment, but when we put gun stations in the field and they start to get a little bit closer together, or the lines get closer together, we set up certain traps that the dog can fall into, like going back to an old fall, overrunning a mark, switching, those types of things. And in order to teach the dog how to identify those traps and not to fall into them, then often we're intervening with a handle when the dog does fall into a trap. Yeah. And then the third reason why we typically will handle on a mark is because the dog simply isn't going to get to the retrieve either on their own or even with gunner help. And we have no alternative but to stop the dog and handle and get them, just sort of salvage the retrieve with that part.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. All right. So let's talk about the first category, which was the factors. Wind, water. It's like Captain Planet. Wind, water. You remember that show?
Yes.
Some of these people that listen probably don't remember it.
Actually, I don't. Sorry. I don't know why I said I do.
Captain Planet?
No. I don't.
Our powers combined.
Yeah,
we can save the planet, man. That's okay. Well,
no. Well, digging into factors a little bit, typically the first factor we end up handling on is water.
Yeah.
I have a certain flow to my training program, and usually if I'm going to be handling on water, initially it's going to be teaching them where to get out of the pond first on mark. A lot of people work on cheating singles, teaching the dog where to get into the pond. I like to start with teaching them where to get out of the pond first. Anyway, so we set up certain retrieves where the dog may be tempted to land grab. We all like to take the path of least resistance, including dogs, including ourselves. And so as if the dog thinks they can get away with doing less work, or doing less work is an option, if they think they can get to a retrieve quicker, they're going to seek to get out of the pond early before they get to the retrieve. And the first bit of training is teaching the dog to stay in the water and swim all the way to the retrieve, at least for me. And maybe we should just mention something here. We talked a little bit about this before the show. I don't believe there's any one way to determine when the right time to handle a dog is on a mark, or that there's one way to do training or a certain order to do it in. I think every trainer's kind of got their own take on it, and they don't necessarily know that there's a right or wrong. And so, I'm going to give you my opinions. Bob's going to give you his opinions. Other trainers are going to give you their opinions, and none of us are wrong, I don't think. As long as there's some thoughtful process, a methodical process that is really teaching the dog in a methodical way through certain steps, so that they understand what's going on and they don't feel overwhelmed. But essentially, that first step is teaching the dog to stay in the water. So when they do begin to land grab, then we just blow a whistle and we handle them at the appropriate time. And then we often combine a crosswind into that too. So we start to teach the dog to fight two factors at the same time in training.
And that crosswind would be blowing towards the shore.
Absolutely. You always want your factors working in concert with each other. So if the wind is pushing the dog to the left, the shoreline should be drawing the dog to the left as well. And the reason why we want to do that is if we're handling the dog to teach them to fight one factor, we're also handling it to teach the other factor at the same time. Or let me put it another way. If you had factors that were working against each other, and you were handling the dog, let's say because they were land grabbing, but you handled them with the wind, now you would be telling them not to fight the wind. So you would be actually undoing training.
Right. Yeah. So think of, or let's do it. We're good. Yes, I agree. So whenever I'm looking at a down the shore mark, I'm always going to pick the side of the pond where the wind is blowing towards the shore. When you cast a dog with the wind, it's going to be easier for them to carry that cast, and you're not really teaching them anything. They'll push off of it more simpler. And so if you have the wind pushing them towards shore and have to cast into the wind, which is harder, they've actually got to comprehend what the heck is going on.
I think through repetition over and over again, and just sort of maintaining that standard. Hey, don't land grab. Don't let the wind push you offline. That eventually the dogs come up with that answer.
Yes. And it is fun when the light bulb clicks.
Yes.
So let's talk about, we'll use this as our example right now. Dog is swimming down the shore. They're going to get out early. You blow the whistle and you handle. What is the cast you're giving?
I think that's a great question. And I think at this stage of the game, we're still talking about a fairly young dog, or, we're early on in their training. And maybe this still even applies as the dog gets older. But if I have to ask myself, or at least this is my philosophy, am I trying to teach my dog how to cast, or am I trying to teach my dog to fight a factor? And if it's the latter, then I'm going to be helpful. And generally I am. When it's about teaching the dog to fight a factor, I am going to give the dog a little bit of additional information, which could mean that I increase the angle of the cast from a literal sense, or I add a step to the cast, a lateral step to the cast to encourage lateral change in direction. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. I want to show the dog the way out of trouble. And because at a certain point, when I feel that I've taught the dog what the standard is through simply handling or using attrition, and I know we might be using some terms out there that people don't quite understand.
I think we're good.
We're good.
Yeah.
So if we're using, if we're teaching a dog through handling, through attrition, through perhaps even throwing a bumper, using some gunner help, at a certain point, we have to expect the dog to take some responsibility for maintaining that standard on their own. And when we feel we've been fair, when we feel we're not asking the dog to do something over their pay grade, and they simply choose not to maintain that standard, then we contemplate using correction. And if I'm going to use correction, then I certainly want to make sure that I'm showing the dog the way out of trouble by being helpful with my cast.
Okay. So in that, let's go from like a young dog that we're teaching and then switch to an advanced dog. So in the first example of a young dog that's learning this concept, we're going to, I'm going to reiterate what you said. You're going to give maybe more cast than you need to help them fight the factors longer, better, whatever. What if they scallop, meaning they would take that cast and then right back towards shore?
If we're still talking about a young dog, and I'd probably like to add a couple of things here, but the first thing is I'm definitely going to jump to attrition. When I see a dog scallop or dig back, and I didn't get the right answer from the dog, the quicker you can get your whistle out, the easier it is to communicate to the dog, hey, wrong answer.
Right.
And then calling the dog back just a few strokes if they're in the water, if they're on land, just 2 or 3 steps. That helps break down a little bit of momentum.
Yeah.
And then reissuing the cast. And if I have to do that 5, 6, 7 times, I will do it. But what it does is it gets the dog out of just a running state of mind into a thinking state of mind. They start to go, well, I've tried to do X, several times. It didn't work. I obviously can't do that. So what are my other options? And often that's when you'll see a change in behavior. And I think that's what we have to focus on with young dogs, is really teaching as opposed to relying heavily on correction to get the answer that you want because that comes with consequences as well.
Right. All right. Now let's maybe switch gears to the more advanced dog. So they've been taught this concept: stay in the water, get out past the gun, stay in the water, get out past the gun, fight your factors. They go to get out early. What are we doing?
Well, I think that we have to evaluate the situation first. What's the level of difficulty? If, are we asking the dog to make a 25-yard swim? Or are we asking the dog to make a 150-yard swim? Is the mark stand out, or is it retired? Is it a single, or is it part of multiple? And level of difficulty always plays into our decision making. The other big thing that we have to look at is level of effort. Being perfect all the time is not what we're aiming for. Effort is what we're aiming for. And the minute we realize that, the more quickly we and our dogs grow. So, and I'll just put it in terms of like human beings. Think about it yourself. You're trying to, let's say you're into archery and you've been out there practicing and you can't hit the bullseye, and you're getting it on the outside of the rings, and I come up and swat you behind the head because you didn't get it in the bullseye.
Right.
Is that going to get you to get it in the rings or get it in the bullseye quicker? Is it going to make you feel like you want to try harder? Is it, especially if I do it over and over again?
Right.
When you actually are putting a lot of time into trying to get it done right, a lot of physical, mental effort into getting it done right.
Right.
And perhaps maybe if I came up behind you and said, you're doing a great job, maybe if you move up a little bit, you'll get it a little closer to the bullseye. You'll have some success that way. That will lead you to maybe figuring some things out about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, how you need to improve, when you need to breathe, and all those things. You probably know more about archery than I do.
That was a good analogy.
But how are you feeling about yourself at the end of that? And what level of effort are you going to bring to the situation versus my initial example where that might have turned into apathy? Your attitude might have turned to apathy. Well, I've tried as hard as I can. I'm not getting it done. I just don't give a shit anymore.
Right.
So I know that really didn't answer your question directly.
No, I think it was just a good discussion for people to think about. But I think that there are times. So I'll give an example. You got a dog that's been taught. And so we get a little bit of lack of effort by trying to get out early. They know they've been taught. So at that point, for me, depending on the situation, like you said, there's difficulty levels, like if it's retired, but if it's a standout gun and a typical down or two down the shore, and they go to get out way before the gunner, and it's an advanced dog, I'm going to say on average, I'll probably let them get out, let them make some momentum, blow the whistle, make a correction, give them an overcast into the water, let them swim a little bit, stop them, and then a straight up cast like towards shore. Meaning they've got to stay. I'm not going to give them and again, that's the advanced dog. The medium dog, I may give that same deal, but then I'd cast them away from the shore, right? Try and coach them in that way. Yeah. Hey, bud, stay in there longer. And it may be just a no here with he got out, no here, get back in the water. Then like when you get out early, it's no bueno, but it doesn't have to be a lightning bolt from Jesus himself. Right. So I'm talking out loud, and now where it's like, they've got to understand that I can coach you through it all the way. Now you've got some understanding, and now you're being lack of effort. You're giving me lack of effort to get out early. Now and I would say this too, if they continue to scallop, if they're in that medium category and they continue to scallop, all right, I tried to show you the way. Now let's see how your way goes. Not good. Now get back in the water. And then I would give them that right back to stay in the water better, longer, and help them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get where you're going with the question, and I agree. At a certain, when I've evaluated the situation and I deem that it isn't over the dog's head and the dog is in the right state of mind today, and I've reviewed this a number of times. And I think I've shown the dog what the standard is. And now they're simply not feeling an onus to maintain the standard on their own. Then yes, correction can come into play for sure. And it may even come into correction when I stop the dog the first time. I may not even give them a chance by handling them first and saying, hey, you have to stay in the water.
Right.
It may be, I expect you to stay in the water because of all those things that I just mentioned.
Right.
And if I have to remind you to stay in the water, then there is the potential that I might apply a correction. Again, it's just taking into account all of the variables. And if I feel that the dog is, again, in the right state of mind, if I've done all the right training, if it's not over the dog's head, if it wasn't something that I reviewed 6 months ago,
Right.
We're not just getting back into the water after having the winter off.
Right. Right.
Yeah, there is that potential.
Yeah. So I think that would be, at least in my example, to me, that's as they're advanced, that's how I would do it. And then the reason I would cast them back into shore with a straight up, like we've got the wind blowing to the left, land on the left, everybody. That straight up left cast. As soon as I give them a swim by over, they swim and they get maybe 10, 15 feet into the water. I'm going to let them get a little bit, and then I'm going to stop them and cast them back. And if they go, haha, he's casting me into land, I'll go, no, that wasn't right either. Cast back over, cast back left. And I want to see them fight those factors at the advanced stage to say, I just need to stay in towards shore and be comfortable in towards shore, but without getting out. That's my end goal.
Yeah, I think you're talking about running like a shoreline water blind at this point. Are you talking
or it's down the shore mark?
Or down shore mark?
All right, let's say this. Let me ask you this to make it more black and white for the listener. Mm-hmm. What are your standards on the down the shore mark with a standout gun?
My standard are the dog has to essentially swim all the way to the bird. And just so people can watch this, and let's say the mark is at the tip of my fingers and my arm represents the shoreline, and the dog has to don't have to take a straight line, but they certainly have to stay in the water until they almost get to the bird. I could say, a few feet early might be okay.
Right.
And again, we're talking about a single and it's a standout gun. So the dog has a reference point.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably going to be my standard.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's a line that this is the art, not the science, I think, in the finesse and the feel of each individual dog and each individual moment. But I like to have them, they've got to get past the gun. They've got to get past the gun, and they've got to go past the gun a bit, right? Then I watch their body language. Are they angling out, or are they going, I did A plus B equals C. I swam all the way past the gun. Now a hard left shoulder gets me out. Like a,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just like a feel to it.
Yeah, I do appreciate when a dog angles, what we call angles out of the pond, doesn't just square out. And there's definitely some drill work out there that you can do to teach a dog.
Yeah, I bet you can find it on Fetch.
You could.
Zing. Yeah. So yes, I think it's just a beautiful thing to see a dog that has the training involved, all the prereqs, everything, and you just watch them angle out and pow right on that bird.
Yeah, it is, but it's probably one of the easiest things we can teach a dog, really. Teaching a dog to swim down the shore and get out of the pond in the right place. The dog in general has so much to reference to understand how to do that, let me rephrase that. It has so much reference, meaning there's a shoreline right there.
Correct.
There's a gunner standing right there. We always throw the mark so the dog has to swim past the gun. At a certain point, we just end up creating habits, and of course there might be some correction involved, and the dog just says, okay, this is the right way to do it. It is much more difficult to teach a dog to hold a crosswind in a field where there are no reference points.
Yeah, and I think that's where this needs to kind of start moving towards, right? Like, we're now in a field, we've got some hay bales, a little bit of terrain, but not much. Just a normal standard issue field. Wind, and so let's not even touch cover, really. Yes.
Just keep it simple.
Just keep it simple. So we've got a good heavy crosswind. And how I explain to people is when we set up marks, we're setting up with wind at our back or a crosswind. We don't really want to send a dog on a mark with the wind blowing towards us. That's the general rule of thumb.
Yes.
You know, are there instances where we have to, or the wind changes after the 15th dog and I'm not stopping now. But when you're setting it up, you want the wind at your back or a crosswind, either way. And I like, if we have like a wicked heavy wind, we're doing crosswind marks and blinds and going to have some fun with it. And you know that that's what we're doing that day. Mm-hmm. All right. So now how would you handle it, bud?
Well, maybe we should talk about the setup a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So just like we did maybe we didn't talk about it much, but when we're setting up a mark to train on teaching a dog to fight factors, generally the rule of thumb is to throw the bird in a direction that would cause the dog to have to fight the factors in order to get to the correct side of the gun. So if the wind is pushing the dog to the left, then we should throw the bird to the right. That way the dog that's fighting the wind is going to stay on the correct side of the gun in general. So just keeping that in mind. Now, if we're training, it was the question, how are we going to train on it?
Sure. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, so we know how we're throwing the mark, and now we have to just decide on, well, what's the standard? What standard does the dog have to meet?
Let's pause, because you bring up a good point. So if we're throwing it left to right, the wind is blowing left to right.
No, the wind is blowing in the opposite direction.
Let's say it again.
So if we're throwing first of all, let's talk about the factor. Which way is the factor? Which way is the wind blowing, Bob?
Left to right. So if we're facing out here, wind's blowing this way.
Wind's blowing left to right.
Yes.
So a dog that's not fighting the wind is going to fade to the right.
Yes. Yep.
So are we going to reward the dog that's not fighting the factor by throwing the bird with the wind?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we going to throw the bird in the opposite direction so that the dog that is fighting the wind factor is going to get to the correct side of the gun station?
All right. I got two answers for you. And
I know.
I'll
You have to decide whether you're judging the dog or you're training the dog. Because I know where your head is at right now. You're saying that, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, if the dog goes under the arc of the bird or behind the gun, they're going to win the bird and run over and get it.
Right.
And that's true from a judging standpoint. If you're out there judging a hunt test or you're judging a field trial, you don't want to reward the dog that you don't want to reward the dog, not necessarily reward the dog, but allow a dog to win the bird and come up with it if you can. You try to protect your bird so you can truly find out if the dog is marking the bird. But in training, our focus is on teaching the dog to fight the factor.
Good point.
And so if we're teaching the dog to fight the factor, then we want to put the bird where it causes the dog to do additional work to get to the bird. We're not talking about marking right now.
Right.
And that's what you've got to separate. We're not actually teaching the dog to mark. We're teaching the dog to fight the wind. That's where our focus is. And so if I throw that bird into the wind, now the dog has to actually fight the wind in order to get to the correct side of the thrower. And we use that thrower, at least initially, as a reference point for the dog.
Great point. So now as we talk about handling on that mark, so again, I'll still bring it in to maybe make it clear for me. If we're throwing into the wind, that means if they go under the arc or run at the gun, they're going to win the bird and be successful. But that's not what we want to teach. So,
but I'm going to stop you right there.
Yep.
If they go under the arc, okay, actually, let me ask you a question now, because this is where we were going initially when I started this conversation. What's your bare minimum requirement for the dog? What's the standard the dog has to meet in order to show that they're adequately fighting the wind? Because that's what this training is about.
Right. And I think that that's where I don't have a great answer. It would be in the moment of watching it. Like if they leave the line and automatically just kind of start going at the gun, or maybe 50% of the way there on maybe a 150-yard mark, the wind is starting to push them and they're just fading and fading and fading. I have this thing in my heart where I don't want to handle too close to the gunner. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if it's like that, literal 2-second decision to make, where if you pause on that thought in your head and you go, shit, I didn't blow the whistle. Now he's too close to the gun station. And
yeah. So let's go back to our watermark, because you asked me, what's my standard on the watermark?
yeah, yep.
My standard on the watermark is the dog has to get out almost at the bird.
Right.
But when I have a standout gun and it's a single. So that's the standard. The dog, that's essentially the line the dog has to, I hate to use this term because it's not exactly how it's done, but that's the line the dog has to take.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't enforce the line. I just enforce where the dog gets out of the water. But that's my bare minimum requirement. You can't use that standard when it comes to teaching a dog to fight a wind.
Okay.
Your standard, you have to look at it a little bit different. In fact, I use this approach for wind and terrain. If I'm asking the dog to angle terrain or I'm asking the dog to fight a crosswind, I have to know in my mind what's acceptable in terms of the dog's performance. A dog has to show me that they're willing to fight the wind. A dog has to show me that they're willing to angle the terrain. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I look at exactly where the gunner's positioned. I draw an imaginary line from the mat where I'm running from to the thrower. And I require the dog to stay on the upwind side of that line. If the dog fades beyond that line or onto the downwind side of that line, that's when I blow my whistle. The dog is showing me they're not adequately maintaining the standard.
Gotcha.
Because typically that line will continue to fade and fade and fade with the wind.
Do you mean the line? So let's restate it again. Because if I'm halfway not with it, then the listener might not be with it. So you draw from the mat to the bird boy.
Yes, I draw an imaginary line. First of all, let's back up even a bit. Okay. We know we're throwing the bird into wind. Use my head as I'll be the thrower. I'm going to throw the bird into the wind. It's going to land at your head.
Okay.
Now, if you look from my head to that, I think there's a black sign. Oh no, that's on the screen. But anyway, if from where I'm standing, the thrower, all the way to the handler or trainer is that imaginary line.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now the dog has been released to come and retrieve the mark that's where Bob is sitting.
Sorry.
But the dog is coming at me and then starts to fade behind the gun, or what we call behind the gun, or downwind of that line. This is upwind of the line because I'm throwing the bird into the wind. The dog is starting to fade downwind of that imaginary line between me, the thrower, and the person that's training.
Okay.
When the dog does that, that's the point at which I blow my whistle.
Okay.
And the first part of the process is just saying, stop doing what you're doing. Mm. And then all I'm going to do is give the dog generally a helpful cast. I'm not going to be precise. I'm not trying to teach the dog how to handle. I'm trying to teach the dog to fight the wind. So it's going to be a little helpful because I got to take into account that the factor has a certain amount of power.
Right.
And I've got to overcome that power. So I give the dog a little additional information. And if the dog is willing to take the cast, has generally decent handling skills, and is disciplined, then they will start to shoulder into the wind and come back to this side of the gun. And when they're doing it, they're fighting the wind to get to the bird.
Gotcha.
You are the bird, right?
Right.
So the dog has to fight the wind. Again, I'm not teaching the dog to mark. I'm simply teaching the dog how to hold a line to get to the mark. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing that's the same way I approach terrain. If a dog is not not angling terrain, dogs generally like to square straight down a hill or straight up a hill when we ask them to angle it. And if they square far enough that they're crossing that imaginary line, blow my whistle and handle.
Gotcha. What if that imaginary line gets too close to the gunner?
That's a good point. So there is a point that I have a cutoff, meaning as the dog swing out to the retrieve, and they're like, maybe they're just holding that line directly at the gun. It's questionable. Are they going to go to the wrong side? Are they going to get to the correct side? And then all of a sudden they break to the incorrect side of the thrower. If they're within 15 to 20 yards of the mark, I don't handle. At that point, I might say stand up and take a step toward the bird,
right,
to the thrower. So hopefully that acts as a bit of a steering wheel to get the dog shifting over into wind. But probably what that is saying is that the dog doesn't really remember exactly where the bird is if they're not, because at that point, the dog is not working on holding a line when they get to that last 20 yards. They're working on finding the bird in the fall area. So you got to start to question, and I'm talking about a standout gun here, by the way.
Yeah.
The dog has a reference point.
So it's interesting that you're comfortable with them just taking a straight line right at the bird boy. Like that is your line.
Yes, I'm absolutely comfortable with it because, again, I'm going to ask you, are we working on marking or are we working on teaching the dog to fight a crosswind?
I think it's kind of both.
And I would disagree. I think, disagree, but it's not that I think you're wrong, because I think everybody's got a bit of it. As I said before, there's no one way to do this. Yeah. We all have it kind of compartmentalized in our heads. But
I guess my thought is it's easy to hold your line and hold your angle if you run right at the gun. To me, that's not there's like a part of that effort that we're talking about where if Fido doesn't almost have to think because they know just run straight at him. And I think, we've had other people on the podcast where it's like, well, if he runs at the gun and he hooks into it, he finds the bird and you win the trial. Great. So don't nitpick him for running at the gun. And I don't nitpick him for running at the gun, but I do think that there's like, that is your target. That is your reference point. And if I'm sending you straight at it, or that's my line, where when they deviate from the line, that's what I'm going to handle. It's, to me, a little bit easier for them to shoulder the wind when they've got that target, or like a white pole blind or something like that. Does that make sense? Or am I just putting the cart before the horse?
I can see how, our mind can certainly go there.
Okay.
But I'd like to expand on it a little bit.
Let's do it. Because this is an awesome conversation. I mean, it's helping me too.
Yeah. And I have to say, Bob, just like you feel like you're growing after 30 years of training dogs, I'm growing more now than I ever did.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. I love having these conversations. I love watching dogs. I love having conversations with everybody that trains dogs, because I know I can still be enlightened. I can learn it's just awesome. Anyway, if just to sort of paint a picture for people, I think you really have to break marking down into 3 categories. Marking training.
Okay.
And the one area that we're talking about right now is what I call line training. It has nothing to do with marking a bird.
Okay.
I'm simply focusing on teaching the dog to hold a line, because dogs that don't hold a line can end up in the wrong places.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one area that we need to devote a certain amount of our training to. Crosswind training, teaching the dog to not land grab, teaching the dog to angle train, teaching the dog to not avoid cover. And again, if we can, we like to isolate those individual components and simply focus on that. The second area of marking training is what I call conceptual marking or destination training. That's teaching did you have questions? No, I thought you looked like you were about to say something.
No, I'm drinking it in.
Okay. So the second area is what I call destination training or conceptual marking. And that's where we set up marking tests in the field in a certain way that teach dogs individual concepts. We have 3 or 4 main concepts. There's check down birds. Those are marks that dogs tend to overrun because another gun station or something else is drawing them deep of the actual destination they should be going to. There are punch birds. Those are marks where the dogs have a tendency to not get to because some element is causing their momentum to break down before they arrive at the destination. There's what I call equidistant marks, which is things like mama, papa, or converging marks. Or they're both going in the right direction, the same direction, but they're relatively close together. And in those situations, dogs can end up switching. They can return to an old fall, or they can avoid going back to the second bird of those equidistant marks because they feel like they're returning to an old fall.
Right.
And in that when I'm doing that type of training, I'm setting up the gun stations in a certain way that the dog may fall into those traps. And when they do, I'm going to intervene in some way, whether that's through handling or through gunner intervention, but something is going to happen to help the dog learn to identify those traps. And they're also going to learn at the same time how to prevent themselves from falling into those traps. I don't care what line they take to those birds in general. I mean, within reason. I'm not working on teaching the dog to hold the line. I'm focusing on getting the dog to go to the destination I've sent them to and recognize it when they get there, and then dig in and stay there until they find the bird. Destination training. The third area is the one that you're talking about a moment ago, and that is actual fundamental marking and memory development.
Okay.
And that's where we focus on accuracy, teaching the dog to mark accurately or not run at the gun if that's what one of the things that you're having an issue with a certain dog. But in essence, we're teaching the dog to, pinpoint precisely where that bird is. I'm not talking about destination. I'm talking about where that bird is relative to the thrower, and generally to go straight at it. And then when they get there, to put on a very organized and methodical hunt to come up with it very cleanly so that they're not burning up a lot of pencil on the paper.
Right.
We're also working on memory development or confidence in memory. I want to set up tests that are specifically designed to teach or hone the dog's mechanics with respect to watching multiple marks being thrown and picking up memory retrieves. And so if I focus on each one of these individual areas on their own and not try to combine them into tests, then the dog walks away from each one of these different types of tests going, I know what I need to do better to do that, or I know what I need to do that better. I know what I need to do that better. And I know what I need to do that better. And hopefully when they get to the field trial or the hunt test, it all comes together so that the dog can do those more complex, challenging tests really well.
Yeah.
And I know we kind of got away from you where you were at, but when you start talking about the dog is running at the gun, well, I don't care that the dog's running at the gun because I'm not working on marking accuracy right now. I'm working on teaching the dog to hold the line and fight the wind. And if we want to take that even just a step further, well, if the dog's at a certain level where they're fighting the wind adequately with a standout gun, let's retire it. Mm-hmm. Or let's make it the second bird of a double.
Right. That's good. I don't even know how to respond to it because I feel like it is high level, and it's about the fundamentals that maybe as I'm rolling through dogs of different stages of their career, right? They're not all the same, that maybe I've got to run the same setup with a bunch of different skill level dogs. So in my head, I'm going, well, this dog's here. This is what I've got to work on with this. This dog's here. This is what I've got to work on with this. And so it's less individualized, and therefore my standard is slightly different. And so it makes sense of how you just described it, but then I'm trying in my brain while I'm hosting a podcast go, well, what the frick do I do?
I've been,
and it's like,
I've been in your shoes, as a pro, 10 years ago, before I quit training dogs personally, that was always the challenge. Like, you have several levels of dogs, and then within those several levels of dogs, you have dogs that need different training in order to really dial in on each dog's, issues or where
strengths, weaknesses, holes, whatever.
Exactly. And so you do your best to try to accommodate all the dogs. Yeah. It's a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And then jump into a podcast.
Yes. And then jump into a podcast.
Yeah. So I think that's great. So if that is your standard on a holding their line with the wind pushing them to backside the gun, in essence. Mm-hmm. Soon as they deviate that line, that's when you're stopping and handling.
Generally, yes. There can be some nuances there, but sure. Again, it's looking at what's the intention of the dog. Oh, by the way, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. Let's say,
I don't know if I got the answer.
Let's say the dog leaves your side, and right off the hop, they end up 5 yards on the incorrect side of the gun. But after taking several steps, they start to hold the line, a straight line.
Yeah, I'm probably.
Are they fighting the wind?
Yeah.
They are fighting.
Yeah, they're fighting the wind.
And the reason why I bring that up, and I hope people were able to catch that, but the reason why I bring that up is we have to look at what the intentions or the level of effort of the dog are to fight that factor, not get too hung up on on where their line is exactly. It's like, ask yourself, is the dog physically fighting the wind?
Yeah.
They might be on the wrong side of the line, but if they're holding a straight line and not getting any further offline, and they only went 10 yards in the wrong direction and then held 350 yards in the right direction,
Right.
just because they're on the wrong side of the line doesn't mean they're not fighting the wind.
And so in that instance, would you have the gunner take a step out, or would you still feel like there's got to be a point where you've got to handle them so they aren't backsiding the gun? Or in that situation, I would get on the radio and go, take a step, bud.
I think that's the only thing I would do, because if I'm stopping the dog to handle them, what am I stopping the dog to handle them for?
You're telling them they're doing it wrong.
Yes, but let's even go a little bit further. What are we stopping the dog to tell? What are we trying to improve by stopping and handling the dog?
They're aligned to the bird.
Be more specific.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Okay, I'll help you out. We're trying to teach them to fight the wind.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We're not trying to teach them to get to the right side of the gun station.
Right.
Don't get hyper focused on something that doesn't matter. At least not today when we're doing this training.
Gotcha.
If the dog ends up on the wrong side of the gun and we handle simply because they got to the wrong side of the gun, I don't think we're sending a clear message about what they need to do to improve on the training that we were doing today.
I gotcha.
I want to just focus on teaching the dog to fight the wind. It's not about getting to the right side of the gun or the correct side of the gun.
Okay. Yeah.
But getting the gunner out and stepping toward the mark just because maybe they didn't quite remember where the mark was, that would be fine.
Yeah. To me, it would just help them fight the wind a little more, stay on the good side, which I think is teaching them
Make some good last minute decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Don't just now go out there and
don't just give up the last 3% of the mark because you got there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my go-to for a lot of my quote unquote handling on marks is I do lean on the gunners a bit when they're young. Like when they're a younger dog learning this stuff.
Lean on them all the time. That's why I keep trying.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not just when they're young. I mean, think of your thrower as a teacher out there.
Yes.
Not a helper.
Yeah. Having a good bird boy, and that's the hardest part is when I get a new employee and they've got to learn to be a bird boy. It's like, dude, I don't want it. You can be on your phone when the dog's coming back with the bird. I do not want to look up while you're on the way. You know, I'm sending this dog out there and you're looking off into Never Never Land. They've got to be my aid and be ready with another bird to throw. They need to be ready to take a step. They can't be sitting down on the four-wheeler. Like there is so much to it.
Yeah.
And I get it, right? I do it for a living. I've got 4 kids out in my backfield right now working. Not everybody has that. You've got wingers and bumper boys and what are the thunder launchers? Like you have those kind of tools to kind of try and get on that same level. But at the end of the day, the best person that can help you and your dog is someone out in the field helping you throw birds and bumpers. So your significant other, your kid, and like some people have like, oh, I got a 7-year-old. I'm like, bro, that 7-year-old is learn how to read. We can't really rely on a 7-year-old to do it right. And a hunting buddy or a training buddy, it's imperative that a warm-blooded, educated person that understands our goal today is out there ready to help you in the field. So,
and if you only have one person, just put them on the key station. You know, you might have 3 marks out in the field and you can use your mechanical launchers on the birds that aren't key birds, but those ones where you know the dog can potentially fall into some traps or not maintain a standard, that's where you want to put your live person if you have one, or put a second winger out there that can throw a second bird if you need to.
Yeah, why not? That's a good one. So, all right. So that was a good, I mean, it helps me. I mean, this is part of the reason I started this podcast is to help me, right? Like we're all trying to get better. And there's so many little things that I'd take away from each episode and guest where like, you know, the way you thought of that is different than the way I necessarily think of it, but it makes sense. And so maybe over the next couple of weeks as I'm working, I'll be like, no, yeah, I see here, you know, and it's good. It's good to think like that.
Yeah. You make an excellent point that I want to mention here. It's the people that leave their ego at the door and say, I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to know how to do everything. I'm on this journey, and this journey is all about learning and growing and finding every opportunity to do that.
Right.
And being comfortable with that. And I mean, if we could all be like you, then there'd be some real competition out there. And it's taken me a long time to get to that place. You know, that when I was in my early part of my career, I was afraid what other people would think if I didn't have all the answers.
Right.
And for everybody that's listening out there, if you can leave your ego behind and just say, I'm gonna learn from anybody that I can. I don't care how much experience they have or whether they've trained one dog or 300 dogs, whether they're a pro or an amateur. Everybody potentially has a pearl for me. And I don't have to, I'm not worried about exposing chinks in my armor because I don't need armor.
Right.
That's just fabulous. And I think that's one thing I would love everybody to take away from this podcast.
Yeah. It's such a nuanced game. There's really not much like it. Probably, you know, anybody that works with animals, getting them to a high level probably has an understanding of what we're working with. But once you get good at maybe cutting wood or cutting down trees, you'd probably find a few people that could say like, hey, if you did this, the tree would fall better. But this is like every dog's personality is different. Everything is so nuanced, and a mistake could happen that now I'm scratching my brain going, well, I've got a Rolodex of stuff I've done in the past, but I could call you, I could call you, I could call you, I could call you, and I could get 4 different answers, and one of those answers could help me make that dog successful. So yeah, leave the ego at the door. And I think we had Colby Williams on maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, and he said that was his, like, how he rose to, at a young age, be successful is he got to be around so many like top tier trainers, what he liked, what he didn't like, and he just absorbed it all. Instead of saying, I know everything, he took it and ran with it, and then still is humble enough to call people saying, what do you think?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So good deal. All right. So we've kind of gotten, we knocked out fighting the factor. Do you think we knocked it out well enough?
I think we did. I think, you know, we've talked about.
When would you recall? What are the corrections we would make for it?
Recalling for failing to fight a factor is very rare for me.
Yeah.
I think.
What about taking a crappy initial line, whether it's a factor or not?
Certainly, but I can tell you that if I'm going to stop a dog, and I have, you're right, that brings up a very important point. So if I am going to stop a dog and call them back for a poor initial line, or sometimes you even get the sense that it's avoidance.
Yeah.
Of something. I don't react quickly. I let whatever's unfolding develop. And I let the dog get significantly away from whatever training I'm doing. If the training's out here and the dog takes off going here, I'm not going to stop the dog within 5 yards or 10 yards and go, toot, no, here, because that just continues to put pressure here. Because sometimes dogs are avoiding things.
Right.
I'm going to let the dog go. They might go 50 yards before I blow a whistle. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out what's going on too. Like, is this dog avoiding the test? Is this dog bolting? What is going on here? And let it develop. You've got nothing to lose when you get a really bad initial line.
I also think in most instances, especially in avoidance scenario, like maybe we're looking at a pond and they got to cut the corner and get into the pond at the right place. Or, they're avoiding a gun station that's close and they're pushing off of it. And then they want to go out to Never Never Land and not try and hold the line. I think allowing them to carry that just enough where it's like, you screwed up. Come on, let's redo this. And then I'd be quick to let's help him out somehow. Like rethrow that bird or move up a little bit. So whatever that situation that's making, because a lot of it's perceived pressure.
You're right.
So let's simplify something here to make it less intimidating for them to tackle what we're working on.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that if the dog generally is avoiding something, and usually what they're avoiding is pressure, and they're looking for a way to escape that pressure. And if you react by putting more pressure on a situation, or even by not simplifying, it's probably going to get worse rather than better.
Yeah. And I think, this is where when we talk to folks, patience, like I'm not perfect. I'll lose my patience with the best of them, but it can't be every day. It can't be every time that dog comes out. It just can't be. You have to somehow go into some Zen state. Like I've got dogs on the truck that will make you immediately go, here we go. Let's deal with this sucker.
Yeah. What do we got today?
But you can't be that way because then you're almost manifesting that to happen. And so if you can come out swinging and keep that patience, especially when you've got a dog that's already in like a little funk, or man, it's been a couple weeks, they just aren't doing the right things, and we've taught them and they know, and they're just, man, they're in that mode. Well, guess what? You probably are too.
Yeah. By the way, that third area I was talking about, accuracy and confidence and memory and mechanics, that also includes state of mind.
Yeah. They got to be comfortable.
Yeah, they've got to be confident. They've got to be comfortable. They've got to be motivated.
Yeah.
And but let's not get too far.
Yeah. All right.
So I think we have talked about factors at least enough for now. I know we're limited on time. So let's move on to another area where we're handling on marks.
So I'd like you to just do a quick dissertation on your approach to teaching a dog a retired gun.
Oh, okay.
And then the last portion of the podcast will be how you feel about handling on retired guns.
Okay. So we're not going to cover concepts.
What do you mean?
Well, we talked about in the second area of training was destination training, and it's a little bit different. Or do you want to cover that, or do you just want to do retired guns? Because I know we're kind of.
Yeah, we got about 30 minutes. And I mean,
what do you want
to do 30 minutes like that?
What do you want to cover?
Hit the destination one just so everybody understands what we're talking about.
So remember, destination training or conceptual marking is setting up tests where dogs can fall into traps, like overrunning a check down bird or a punch, breaking down early on a punch bird or switching on a equidistant marks or whatever. And in those tests, we're not teaching the dog to fight factors. We're not handling the dog to ask them to be disciplined about fighting the wind or getting in the water, where we may be presented with opportunities where the dog falls into one of those traps that I just mentioned. And sometimes handling comes into play. For instance, the very first concept that I work on is not returning to an old fall. We set up a particular marking test where the dog may fall into the trap of ending up going back to a place they've already retrieved a bird from and not getting all the way to the mark of choice.
Right.
And that's a situation where we will handle, not to teach the dog to hold a line. Simply, the only time we're going to handle them is when it's clear that they have made the decision to return to the old fall.
Right.
And by stopping and handling the dog out of the old fall or away from the old fall and making sure that they get to the correct destination, that's how we teach the dog to recognize those traps, how not to fall into them.
Right.
And whether or not you handle depends on each individual concept. Sometimes it's a matter of stopping and calling the dog back. Sometimes it's a matter of having gunner intervention. There's three different tools you've got there.
Right.
But that could be a a little bit more of a lengthy conversation
Yeah.
than we have. So, but that's that's one of the areas for sure. Maybe we come back to it if we have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Because
That
I
sounds
think
good.
we want to cover those other two areas.
Yeah. No, I think those are cool. We could do a podcast just on that.
Probably could.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's take a dog that is up and coming and we want to run field trials and the concept of a retired gun, which real quick, you've got 3 dudes in white coats out in the field. Boom, duck, boom, duck, boom, duck. We got 3 marks. Dog goes and gets the go bird and he comes back and 1 or more are hidden. So they retired behind a clump of grass, a tree, a hay bale, whatever the case may be. They are now not visible to the dog, and that dog has to remember, hey, I saw a dude out there. I marked that bird. I know where I'm going. I gotta go. So that's a retired bird.
That's a retired bird. Yeah. And so, I think your question is, how do we teach dogs to
Yeah. What's your process of teaching?
Because all of our early dog training is done with standout guns. Whether you're running hunt test or field trials, as far as I'm concerned, 90+% of your training should all be standout guns. And at a certain point, actually very early in a dog's training, do we get on to hidden and retired guns, usually when they're at the fundamental stage of training. So they're still in yard work at this point. Mm-hmm. And I have a pretty specific way of doing it. And essentially what I do is I set up 3 gun stations in the field that are really wide apart. One's going to be well over here, one might be up the center, and one well off to the side. And they're no more than 75 yards. Every mark is that short. And initially I want to start off with retiring the thrower behind a holding blind, something that's very identifiable.
Yeah.
But I will also, as this training goes on, blend in, retiring the gun behind a bush or behind a ghillie blanket or behind an umbrella, the various ways we might retire a thrower. So you set up 3 stations in the field, and you're only going to do singles. So if you only have one person, they can walk around, but you need a person to do this. And what you do is you ask the thrower to walk laterally across the field out of their holding blind about 7 or 8 steps, 7 or 8 big steps. They're a substantial distance from their holding blind.
Ontario 10-step.
Like an Ontario 10-step, exactly.
From our friend, the Canadian.
And once they get to that, and this is all in the setup phase, right? We haven't brought a dog to the mat yet because we have to set this up. So once the thrower is 7 to 8 steps out of their holding blind, have them throw a large white bumper the distance of a throw, about 1.5 times the distance of a bird throw. I like to use large white bumpers for the marks at this stage. So all we're doing is identifying for ourselves where that mark is going to land. So once the bumper's on the ground, then have the thrower grab another white bumper, large white bumper, go out to where that bumper landed and tee 2 bumpers up. Teeing 2 up, lay 1 on the ground, and then prop 1 up on it like this so the end of it is sticking up in the air.
Beautiful.
And what you've put out there is a target that the dog can see from the mat all the way to the mark and when they get to the fall area. That's critical. And I think you might even mention here that the sun should be at our back. If the dog's looking into the sun, those targets are going to be invisible. If the sun's at our back, those targets are going to be glowing.
Yep.
So now we've got everything set up the way it should be. The thrower is going to be positioned 7 or 8 yards from the holding blind, and they're throwing a bumper in the same direction, away from the holding blind, away from where they're standing. I'd guess the average bird throw is about 15 yards, maybe.
Sure.
A little less, something like that. So they're throwing it a little bit more than that, maybe about 20 yards.
Okay.
And so then you bring the dog to the line. You have obviously you target the dog on the thrower. Once the dog is looking at the thrower, you signal for the thrower to shoot and throw. The bumper that the thrower is throwing should land right beside that target.
Yes.
Okay. You don't send the dog yet. Then you ask the thrower to retire. You wait until the bumpers come to rest on the ground first, then ask the thrower to retire. Now the thrower starts to walk back. What's the puppy or the young dog going to do?
Look back.
Start to watch the gunner walking back to the holding blind. Well, at this stage of the game, we're really showing that dog that we didn't beam this person up into thin air. They just walked over and they sat behind something.
Right.
They didn't disappear. They didn't evaporate. And then, of course, they're still going to be looking there. And then you, the trainer, are going to feed the dog information. Once the thrower is hidden, you, the trainer, are going to feed the dog information, push-pull information to get them to look over toward the bumpers. And because you've placed a target there, that puppy is going to see the bumpers and go, oh, there's the bumpers. And they're going to lock on the target. Then you're going to send them.
Yeah.
And they're going to go out and get the mark. And what you're doing is you're essentially teaching them the mechanics of retired gun marks and how to do marking exactly how you want them to do.
Right.
Not to run at the gun, not to run at the holding blind, to run directly at the mark. And when you do that over and over and over again, you create a habit. You create the habit of staying focused on the mark. The dogs will stop watching the thrower walk into the holding blind.
Right.
They just know, I just need to watch that target.
Right.
And they end up running at the target, even when the targets disappear, because you've created a habit.
Yeah, that's good. So I'll be honest with you. Like when I first started running field trials, I'm still 100% learning this game. That's what's making it really fun for me to advance my skill set, right? So I didn't teach anybody a retired gun. I just had built master hunters. And it's like, well, we got to learn how to do a retired gun. Let's go, right? Where if you bring them up as a puppy, knowing that you've got an end goal to do something like this, your toolbox is way more full than when it's already 2.5, 3 years old. And now I'm like, wow, we got to do some retired guns now. But it would make sense to say, all right, 2.5-year-old master hunter that comes to me for training that wants to try cues. Let's just do it like this for a little while and get comfortable with it instead of just send it.
Yes. And remember how we talked about the 3 areas of marking? That third area, this is part of it. I don't just do this with puppies. I suggest that people do it on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every week or every month, but every once in a while, just say, hey, we're going to do walk-away retired guns this week. Because we're working on great marking mechanics and accuracy. And that's essential when you're running field trials. Dogs have to mark accurately or they're not going to the next series.
Right.
Even for hunt test dogs, those marks are so close together that you can end up in the wrong fall area very easily if you don't have a tight, organized hunt.
Right. And they're technically all retired. That was like my theory behind being coming from the hunt. Is like, well, they didn't have white coats. So, if you were to take that guy away, it'll be fine. Mm-hmm. There's just so much to learn and grow and challenge yourself and challenge the dogs that it's been a fun adventure for me.
Yeah. I believe it because I've experienced it myself.
Yeah.
Still experiencing.
So, all right. So that's how we work on it with a pup.
And an older dog.
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to expand on it a little bit more with the older dog because you brought up memory too as well.
Yeah.
Can we go there?
Yeah.
So one of the other things that has to be, as far as I'm concerned, that has to be a very regular part of your training is what I call the wide open equidistant triple.
Okay.
And it serves there's 3 things that you're truly working on, but it's focus training that, let me explain how it's set up. So you want to go to a field that's relatively flat, where the factors are relatively neutral or non-existent, meaning you want to go on a day when there's not much wind, there's not heavy cover, there's not a great deal of roll to the terrain. Obviously we're not going to have a water situation where the dog might be tempted to run around or get out early. So no real factors. And the reason why we don't want roll to the terrain is because When the dog leaves the mat for any one of these marks, we don't want the dog to be headed out and then all of a sudden drop down into a valley and be unable to see all the way to the destination.
Okay.
Okay. So they have to be able to see the destination from the time they leave the mat to the time they get there, or most of the time. Like, might be like several steps where I will say, yeah, this is quick. And we don't want a field that has a lot of hay bales or bushes or mounds, things that give the field character or variety. We want it to be a fairly simple field. So if we have that and we've got some distance, then what we want to do is set up 3 marks in the field that are, again, really spread wide apart.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to push those out a significant distance. If you're running hunt tests, maybe you put them out there 150, 175 yards. It's a little bit more than a hunt test would be, but this is good experience. Or if you're running field trials, let's go 300, maybe 300 yards, maybe even a little bit more. Okay. If you can't, that requires a fair amount of room. And all of these marks should be about the same distance from the mat. What we don't want to have is one of those gun stations right in the dog's face, because that's a big distraction. We want the dog to look out and look at each one of these gun stations and say, that one is no more important than that one or that one over there.
Very good.
No more distinct, no more attractive. So we set up those 3 gun stations wide apart, and at every gun station, we want a holding blind. A holding blind the dog can see, not one that's behind a bush. We're not using a winger with no holding blind at it. We want holding blinds at every station.
Okay.
And we're going to throw a triple. We're going to throw a triple in order to accomplish a few things. First thing that we're practicing is line mechanics. So when you go to the line, you get an opportunity. You have all the guns standing, obviously invisible with 3 from the line. You get an opportunity to work on targeting, getting the dog to pick out all 3 gun stations. Then you get an opportunity to work on the mechanics of getting the dog to swing from one gun station to another when the birds are being thrown. And you don't throw them in a simple order around the horn. You want to practice pushing and pulling. So that's maybe center, right, left, or right, left, center, but you're going to do some pushing and pulling, and you're going to have some big swings in there. So you're practicing those mechanics. And that's when you're probably going to find you get an opportunity to work on creeping, because when there's big swings and it's a multiple, that's when your dog's going to walk for it. And I know we haven't got to retired guns yet.
You're good, dude. You're good. I loving it.
And so we get to practice these things and enforce some standards with respect to obedience. And then the next area that we get to work on is the mechanics of getting a dog ready for a memory retrieve, one that's retired too, right? The dog comes back with the go bird, and now you have to practice good tempo, right? The dog sits down, you want to get their spine lined up. Once their spine is lined up, take the bird, then let them look out in the field and sort of get their bearings. What happened out there? And while they're doing that, you start to decide, do I need to feed this dog some information to push, pull, get them looking in the right direction? You do that. Then once they're looking in the right direction, you give them some more time to ask any more questions they have. You look for that body language that they're ready. The ears are coming up, the breathing slows down. Maybe they close their mouth. Maybe they lean in a little bit, all those things.
Yeah.
And then when you see that body language, you say, they're ready to go. They're looking in the right direction. I'm going to send them. Okay. So you get a chance to practice those mechanics on 2 birds. But here's the beauty of it that applies to retired guns. As long as you point and shoot the dog in the right direction, there's a 98% chance that they're going to get that mark without getting lost, because you have set the mark up so that they're not going to fall prey to factors.
Right.
They're not going to get lost because they lose sight of the destination, or break down early because they lose sight of the destination. When they get within 50 yards of the mark, they're going to see the holding blind without a doubt. So that's going to help them identify the destination. They're going to go to the destination. They're going to stop when they get to the destination. They're going to run around looking for the bird. They're going to find it, and they're going to come back with it. And you're going to get to do that on 2 birds.
Where?
And so at the end of it, the dog's going, man, that was pretty easy. I actually can do this.
Right.
And they develop this confidence in them to do retired guns. They also get to practice the mechanics of retired guns. That's extremely important.
So you mentioned the distance for a hunt test 150, field trials 300. What's the distance between the holding blinds that you would have it be at?
When they're separated by enough distance that there's no chance the dog's going to look over and go, oh, there's the holding blind, and end up at the wrong destination. Like good separation. Like when I do it, I could say there's probably 150 degrees of separation between the outside.
Very wide
apart. Because part of it, like I said very early on, is practicing the mechanics of swinging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And working on not moving forward. If I have to make a correction for forward movement on this test, everybody pick up your birds. We're starting over again.
Yeah. Very good. I like that. So again, in my brain, while I'm listening to this, and I'm sure you guys who tune into this are doing the same thing, but I'm going in my head, all right, what field can I practice this one in? Because I've got hay bales and,
Gotcha. If you can't go 300 yards, don't worry about it. Do 200 yards.
Right.
Again, it's the mechanics to get it to work on, and the confidence, your brain comes. One thing I want to mention, because we've talked a lot about handling on marks, and we've talked about teaching a dog to fight factors and teaching a dog to do concepts, is that when you do that training, you undo a couple of things. You undo accuracy, because when you start to interfere with line or you interfere with getting to the mark, now the dog changes their focus. Their focus isn't on marking anymore. Their focus is on doing something on the way to marking.
Right.
And so marking tends to deteriorate. When you handle, you cause the dog to think, I've done something wrong. And so now you take away confidence.
Right.
And that's when you start to see, if you've got a really good dog and you're wondering, why is my dog marking very well anymore? It's probably because you're hyper-focusing on the first two areas and not doing enough of the third area. And that's why this training that we just talked about is so important. Yeah. You have to maintain confidence, mechanics. It's super important.
It's such a balancing act between challenging them, teaching them, correcting them, back to teaching. But it is so difficult to get that's why it's impressive to go to some of these trials and watch, the FC, AFC, or a national field champion and be like, hey, that's a stud. And it's also, I was just at one last weekend. We're at the Open, and I'm thankful to them that they had pamphlets made, because that was the worst thing that ever happened to hunt tests and field trials, when they said you can just look online. Like, the actual pamphlet is such cool information to look at, who the dog is, who its parents are, and just kind of how old is it. It gives you cool reference, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this dog, and it's an FC, AFC. He ate it just like my dogs ate it. And I'm like, it is so hard to hit that accomplishment to just move on to the next series. It's impressive. And so it gives you a little solace that, I wasn't the only one to eat it. Oh. And there are dogs that are really, really, really good that ate it in the exact same reasons that mine did. And so you just kind of put it in your Rolodex of, okay, we can work on this. We can work on this. But then this conversation gave me some ideas of, that's going to help several dogs on my truck continue to progress by just changing my frame of reference, giving me a couple ideas to work with them, to build them slightly differently and in the direction we want to go.
Yeah, I can, especially the last part of this conversation, I can almost guarantee you that if you are deliberate about blending in the training that we just talked about and the fundamental side of marking, and not just thinking, I need to train hard every day. If I'm not training hard, I'm not getting it done. Mm-hmm. If you can get past that idea that you need to train hard every day and blend in the stuff we just talked about, you're going to see some real changes in how your dogs put together those tests at field trials and hunt tests, because confidence is extremely important. Mechanics is extremely important. Marking accuracy and that stuff is, I think it's huge.
Yeah. I do too. I think the other thought that we can maybe kind of close this out, because we're talking about handling on marks. I believe that there is such thing as too much handling on marks. And therefore you're going to, like you said, it can deteriorate your confidence. It can deteriorate their confidence. It's putting them in a different mind frame of, I did something wrong, or you're just working on something else. I forget how you worded it. And then you get a dog that might begin to just rely on you. Like there's a happy medium in this conversation of too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And so I guess to finish my thought would be, then probably need to simplify. If you're finding that every mark you're throwing, we've got to handle, you're doing it wrong. You gotta 5 days a week, it's 8 marks a day or whatever, and you're handling on all of them because we're talking about handling on marks. You probably need to simplify and get that dog's marking ability back and make it less difficult in terms of fighting the factor. Make it a little easier to fight the factor the right way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. As I said, one of the things that happens is apathy. If the dog is constantly wrong,
right,
then they just learn that they're always wrong, and that, I don't have to worry about doing this right or that right, or trying, because Bob's going to tell me when I'm doing it wrong. And maybe I'm just conditioned to getting my butt kicked anyway, because these dogs have so much horsepower in them. So I think we've got to make sure that we're working on the third area of marking on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was good. You're very smart, gentlemen. You are, dude.
A lot of people would disagree with you.
Well, maybe. All right. In this regard, then, the way you think about things is very methodical. The way you explain it to our listeners is very methodical. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming, taking time out of your day. I know that you've got a big weekend ahead with the seminar. And so it means a lot that you come into the home and sit in the studio and do this with us and share your information with our guests. So there's a couple things I'm going to ask you. One, if someone wants to come and watch one of your seminars or have you come to their club or whatever, how would they go about facilitating that?
Pretty straightforward. You can email me at the retrievercoach@gmail.com or support@retrievercoach.com. You can go to my website, www.theretrievercoach.com. If you want to check out my Fetch membership, /Fetch. All of my events are listed on the website, and the details about them, what level they are, what the focus is, because the workshops, there's 5 or 6 different formats of workshops that I do at different levels. And so they're all listed there. People can check that out. And if they want to attend one as an observer or handler, you can register right there on the website.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then just to give the Fetch program another plug, what can that person who has a 6-month-old puppy or a 3-year-old puppy, what are they signing up for?
Well, they're signing up for a lot of this, because I do webinars once a month. I do Q&A sessions twice a month. They're live Zoom meetings where everybody gets to listen to me talk and ask questions. They get access to me. So if they're going through the training program and they have a question, or they've come up against a wall, or they want to talk about their training plan, they can ask me anytime by clicking on that Ask Kevin button. But they also get access to a complete training program. I have a flow chart of training. It takes a dog right through the puppy stuff where we're doing treat training, all the way through the yard work and the early marking development, like we've talked a little bit about tonight. All of the advanced blind work and the advanced marking training. When I talk about teaching your dog to fight factors and teaching them all those marking concepts and the balance by working on that third, they get access to videos, written content, diagrams, checklists, and And also there's a huge suite of trainer development information, which is videos, conversations like this, or we do a deep dive into so many different parts of training. It's all there. And once you sign up as a member, you pay a monthly fee. It gives you access to everything that I've just talked about, and you can get out at any time. And if you just want to check it out, the first 10 days, if you don't like it in the first 10 days, you just email me. I give you your money back. It's easy. No risk.
I want to meet the person who didn't like it in 10 days, and I want to give them a knuckle sandwich.
Sandwich.
Yeah, I had to emphasize sandwich. Yeah. Dude, well, I appreciate it very much. Anyone, it's going to be in the show notes. If you listened on the regular podcast, iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff, make sure you head over to the YouTube channel where you can watch us. So when he was talking about certain little diagrams where we use it with my head and his arm and this and that, you can actually view the podcast on there now. So as we move forward, you can check out the YouTube channel for that stuff as well. So as always, Kevin, I appreciate you taking time out of your day and being here with us and doing it, man. It's a pleasure.
Always enjoy it. It's a great conversation with you. I had fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. It's always helps me as well. So it's selfish. I'm selfish.
Good for you.
Thank you. Well, everybody who tuned in, thank you. Week in, week out, you come back listening for more information. So thank you to you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Cheers.